everybody, this is Grandmaster Damian Lemos for OnlineChessLessons.net. In this DVD, we're gonna talk about the opening and the concepts behind the opening. I'm gonna try to introduce you to the concepts of the opening, but when we talk about opening, we are not talking about a theory only. We are talking about concepts. If you follow these concepts, you're gonna know what to do in the opening, what not to do too. And usually there are some universal concepts we need to follow if we want to be a successful opening player. So here just to start, let's see a sample line. So we start learning some examples and let's say concepts of the opening. And well, in this case we're going to start playing as white. White plays e4. As you know, e4 and d4 are the most common ways of opening the game. E4 is cool because as you see here, now the queen and the bishop, they are ready to go out. When we play d4, which is great as well, usually white can move this bishop, but then we got closed positions after this because as you can see, it's gonna be harder to develop these two bishops. Anyway, these are the most popular ways of opening the game as white. Well, white can also play c4, which is the English opening. He can play knight f3 plus c4, which is kind of an English opening as well. But no matter what you play, if you follow the concepts and you know what you're doing, you should get a good position, especially as white because we have the first movement advantage. So okay, let's see, for instance, e4. As you know, one of the main ways of facing e4 it's playing c5, which is the Sicilian defense. And usually white plays knight f3. First rule, right? Developing all your pieces first, and if we can move the pieces to the center, that's better. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense to play something like knight h3 because we are developing the knight, but we are not controlling the main squares in the center. On the other hand, if we play something like knight f3, we are controlling the main squares here, and we also want to open lines in the center, so this makes a lot of sense. There are some other rules too, like controlling the center. We are gonna try doing this as white as well. Once we have the chance, we should castle as well, because the king's security is very important. And by castling, we are not only putting our king in safety, we are also bringing a rook to the game. So castling makes a lot of sense. And then we should, after developing the knights, the bishops, and castling, we should find a good square for our queen. So then we are connecting our rooks. But okay, now we're gonna see, instead of going too far with the rules, we're gonna see this with samples, so it's easier to understand. So here after knight f3, as we said, we are developing a piece, and usually black should do the same thing, right? Developing his pieces, controlling the center. He usually plays d6 here too. But let's see what happens if black doesn't follow the rules. What happens if he plays something like d5? D5 it's a move that a lot of beginners would play because they are attacking the center immediately. But the thing is, black is attacking the center without development. As you can see, all his pieces are still in the first rank. So as white, we are happy to take, because now black is tempted to break another opening rule. I mean, what black is doing here, this is bringing the queen out early in the opening, and as you guys should know, we should never, well, there are some exceptions of course, but usually moving the queen like this, you know, out in the opening, it's not a good idea. Because basically here white is gonna take the chance of developing another piece, in this case knight c3, we are developing and we are threatening the queen. That means black is gonna have to invest another tempo moving the queen, and this tempo could be used to develop a piece, right? Like the bishop, the knights. So he's wasting too many development tempos. The best thing black can do here is go back and see what happens. And if he plays something like queen e6 check, this is not a good idea either. He's moving the same piece in the opening a lot of times. Usually it's not recommended to play the same piece twice in the opening. And here black is moving the queen like, yeah, 2 times and probably more. As you can see as white, we keep developing our pieces and we'll probably win more tempos as you can see. After castling, we are gonna probably play something like rook e1 and our rook is attacking the queen too. So as we can see, eventually black is gonna move the queen like 3 or 4 times, and again, this is not good in the opening. If you don't have good development, you're probably gonna be punished like, when you lack development, it's not a good thing. Let's see here, for instance, black plays what I think it's the best try, like going back home, right? It's like we understand as black we made a mistake, so we go back home so we can finish our development. And okay, white here plays bishop to c4. Bishop c4, it's a great move. We are not only developing, we are developing the bishop to an aggressive square. We can also play something like bishop e2, but this is like a bit more passive. We are developing the bishop and that's great. We are ready to castle as well. But we have to understand that c4 it's a better square for our bishop. As we can see, the bishop on c4 it's attacking the weakest point in black's position, which is f7. This pawn right now it's being protected, but this pawn is being protected by the king only. So it's not good for black. And here black plays bishop to c4. First of all, let's try to understand this move and why black plays this, and then we'll see why this is a bad move. As black, I guess the first move we look at is playing e6, trying to finish our development as soon as possible, and trying to blockade this bishop on c4 a bit. But when we play 6 as black, we say, oh, our bishop on c8 is not playing much. That bishop on c8 it's inside the pawn chain. So why not moving the bishop first and then playing e6? What can happen? But usually in the opening, and this is a rule we should always remember, usually it's better to develop your knights first, and then you can develop your bishops. And here we'll see why. This pawn is weak, the c4 square is unprotected, so here white can play something like bishop takes f7 check, and after this knight e5 check, which is attacking the king with check, and the bishop on c4 it's unprotected. By this simple tactic we are winning a pawn as white, and we are proving again that development plays a big role. This possibility happens because black made a mistake in the opening. I mean, he played d5, queen takes d5, queen d8 again. I mean, he invested too many tempos in the opening. So here we see a punishment. Another move which is pretty interesting is playing knight to e5 too. Like we are changing the move order. Instead of playing bishop takes and knight e5, we try knight e5 immediately. which is attacking the bishop. And if he takes the queen, we're going to just mate him on f7. So again, we see that development plays a big role in the opening. Let's see what happens if he tries something like this. Then we can just castle as white, again following the opening rules, which makes a lot of sense. The rook is ready to enter the game. If you have the chance of placing rooks in the open files or semi-open files, that is a good idea. And again, I think black should have played something like e6, leaving the bishop inside the pawn chain. Maybe this is not the greatest thing, but at least black is some steps away from castling. Here, black insists on playing bishop c4, and here again, as white, we have the choice of winning a pawn by playing something like bishop takes f7, followed by knight e5. As you can see, we are winning a pawn as white too. Or playing knight to e5, which is pretty similar to the previous variation we saw. We want to mate him, and we want to take the bishop too. He cannot take the queen, because we're going to mate him on f7. And if he plays bishop h5, defending h7, as you can see, this bishop is like overloaded, defending f7 and attacking the queen, but by playing, the simple queen takes, then we still with bishop takes f7. So black has few choices. I think bishop e6 is the only move, but here after the simple bishop takes, we can see that black's pawn structure is destroyed. So I don't think this is playable in the long run. He cannot develop his pieces. We have a much better position as white. We can just keep developing and creating threats. So by looking at this little example, what we want to learn is some of the basic opening concepts. We need to start, remembering them and maybe get used to them. Like, again, in the opening, as you get a higher level, you'll need to study theory, and it's great sometimes to know theory, but you have to also understand that if you don't learn, if you don't get the opening concepts first, there's not much sense in knowing theory. It's better to learn these concepts first, because knowing these concepts, you'll know how to play the opening by using the logic.